You know the cliche about movie music. It was so good I didn't know it was there. Well, you can't ignore the music in Close Encounters. In fact, it's central to the plot. John Williams tells us about that famous five-note theme.
I said to Steven Spielberg, if I could write a seven-note motif, whatever it is, 5, 6, 7, it would be more like a melody. And he kept saying, no, it should be just 5, because if you get into 6 or 7, it becomes a tune rather than a signal. So we called up a mathematician friend and said, how many combinations of 5 notes are there in the chromatic scale? So he called us back an hour later and he said the combinations go up to about 350,000 something or other number. And I'd written about 350, so we hadn't exhausted anywhere near the possibilities. But we kept coming back to this one.
Kick at me.
There are a couple things about it that perhaps explain why it seemed better than the others. One of them is that it ends on the fifth note of the musical scale, which is, that's unresolved in music. That's like ending a sentence with the word but. You say a sentence and you say but, and you create an expectancy.
Close Encounters was the third film score John Williams composed for Steven Spielberg, following Sugarland Express and Jaws. Among the most recent are Jurassic Park and Schindler's List, for which Williams won yet another Academy Award. Williams' scores for Spielberg films are among the most honored in movie history. Now back to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, here on the Sci-Fi Channel. Welcome back to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, here on the Sci-Fi Channel. I'm your host, Terri Garr, and I'm not giving anything away by telling you that my character, Ronnie Neary, never meets the occupants of the mysterious UFOs, as you soon will. These aliens were created by Carlo Rambaldi, who built the second King Kong and went on to design E.T. himself. Rambaldi sculpted creatures centuries ahead of us in evolution, with long tapered fingers for pushing buttons, enormous heads for their big brains, and tiny ears because they communicate telepathically. The lead alien was a remote-controlled mechanical figure, which the crew nicknamed Puck. He was surrounded by numerous smaller aliens, portrayed mostly by 6-year-old girls.
And they also had to train to do little feet. That was their big thing, was they'd say little feet, and then they would all kind of shuffle around like little extraterrestrials and then move their hands like this. You could only shoot for moments, basically, before 3 of them would say, excuse me, I have to go to the bathroom. And, you know, all these little extraterrestrials were waving their hands, and then they'd leave for 20 minutes because they had to unzip and get the thing and take their false hands off and take their heads off. And I think if Steven ever did extraterrestrials like that again, they would probably have, like, zippers.
Soon it will be time to make contact. Get ready for your close encounter of the third kind. The letterboxed edition of Close Encounters of the Third Kind will continue here on the Sci-Fi Channel. Close Encounters of the Third Kind was originally released 2 years after Star Wars in 1977. It was the height of the disco craze, and the studio group Mecco had released a hit disco version of John Williams' Star Wars theme.
It came out, of course, after the film was released as a kind of record, a promotional record, you know, which I didn't know even was happening, you know, and I didn't have anything to do with that. But I must say I kind of got a kick out of it. I think in science fiction and in sound, the sound of science fiction, the sound of science fiction music, anything goes. There are no conventions, really, that are the restraint. If you do a film, let's say, about Victorian England, there's a certain kind of acceptable aural range in the music or in the style of performance or whatever that fits this. You get into science fiction and you can go into Bernard Herrmann to the 10th power, the most outrageous instrumental combinations that he used to use, 12 xylophones and 13 tubas and all this sort of stuff. Outlandish, outrageous stuff. There's a spirit about this film. I think there's something in it that's more than the physical parts of just a movie. And that's what I felt writing the music, and I hoped I could complement it with the orchestra.
Now back to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, here on the Sci-Fi Channel. If you're watching Close Encounters for the first time, you're about to see perhaps the most thrilling final scene in the history of science fiction films. If you've seen it before, you can savor the experience. It's great entertainment and more. I've always been impressed about how Steven Spielberg has managed to combine commercial success with larger themes. Composer John Williams recalls this final scene.
I wrote this sort of musical piece made up of these sort of nonsensical things, starting with single notes and eventually with big, elaborate chords in the orchestra.
We're taking over this conversation now.
And it got very fast. They send it back, forth. So it became I don't know what the dialogue meant. Nobody does. But the point of the whole thing was at last communication, contact. We're speaking through music.
I mean, it turned out to be such a great thing. The last 20 minutes of the movie has about 6 lines of dialogue in it. You couldn't believe what it was like to read the script and then see the storyboards for not just 5 minutes, but 20 minutes of the movie, where all that happens is bump, bump, and then they go bump, bump, and you want to just jump out of your seat when they finally get the point.
So hold on to that seat as the Sci-Fi Channel brings you the exciting conclusion of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You've just seen the original 1977 version of Close Encounters of the Third Kind here on the Sci-Fi Channel. Soon after his tremendous success with E.T., Columbia Pictures offered Steven Spielberg the almost unprecedented opportunity to revise Close Encounters. The result was Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the special edition, released in theaters in 1980 and still available on video. The two versions are essentially the same, but the special editions tighten some scenes and adds others. For example, in the second version, you don't see Roy Neary tearing up his shrubbery to build his model of Devil's Tower. Spielberg cuts right to the building in progress. In fact, I had to come back to shoot some scenes for the editing purposes myself. The chief difference between the two versions is that the editing makes clear something ambiguous in the original story. Roy Neary is the only Earthling invited aboard the alien ship. And in the special edition, we follow Neary aboard and glimpse what he sees inside. I hope you enjoyed this special showing of the original version. I've certainly enjoyed my close encounter with you here on the Sci-Fi Channel. Thank you for watching.